I would now like to invite Dr. Pradip Dutta, Chairman, ISA and Corporate Vice President and Managing Director, Synopsys India, for the welcome address.
Good morning. Honorable Minister of State for Communications and Information Technology, Government of India, Sri Sachin Pilot. Secretary, Department of Information Technology and Telecom, Sri R. Chandrasekhar. Respected dignitaries on the dais, distinguished members in the audience, friends from the media, and my fellow colleagues from the India semiconductor industry. It was November of 2004, I'm just taking a step backwards, November 2004, and thanks to STPI, ISA actually came out on stage and announced its inception. And even to this from that day onwards, today, we have been actually very focused on one mission, and which is India needs a mission on semiconductors and increasingly in electronics. We didn't have anything in concrete at that time. We didn't know how to go there, but it was a work in progress that started several years ago. If you just pause to take a look at the emerging markets, if there are two characteristics that define them is a high population density and a relatively higher GDP. What that does is it drives consumption. It drives a demand for many things in life, from transportation to communication to a lot of smart electronics, etc. down the road, but typically it is technology that drives all of that. And as we see, and we have heard Mr. Dutta earlier in the morning, electronics will be the meta resource for most of that demand creation and satisfaction. And therefore it will be 4 times the oil industry and a couple of times more than any of the other industries that we are more familiar with. And if you add on top of that the 300 million Indians, whose per capita income can be anywhere between 4 to 10,000 US dollars, that's a lot of aspiration that's going to fuel that demand. And let's not forget the 700 million other Indians who are proverbially at the $2 to $3 a day. But even there, it's a very interesting sector because delivering education, healthcare, smart governance, etc., are all priority sectors for this government. So within ISA, we decided to start focusing on, let's try to enumerate what is that opportunity space. And in 2009, we chaired a team and we looked at calculating what will be the electronics from telecom, from semiconductors, from office automation, and all these other things. And as you have all heard by now, a very well-established figure of $400 billion. That is a growth of a CAGR of 22% in the space of the 10 years of 2010 to 2020. Now, roughly, if you think 15% of any electronic system is going to be semiconductors, that's almost $60 billion of semiconductors. If you look at today's where we are, the picture is not that bright. Our semiconductor is probably less than $10 billion. Our electronics is only in that $50 billion range. So both from an electronics as well as in semiconductors, we are talking we need 10x growth in the next few years that are left for us to reach 2020. So there's going to be a lot of work that's required. If you look at today's India's production, there's hardly any value addition in terms of the local content that goes on. The manufacturing is very sparse. And yet, interestingly enough, this is a country which is well recognized for its design. And we are well recognized for our strong intellectual property norms. And yet, we don't seem to create a lot of local domestic product companies with IPs resident in this country. So there has to be something done about it. In fact, ISA with Ernst & Young and DIT, we commissioned a study. And one of the recommendations is, in order to reach those targets of $400 billion by 2020, we need at least 50 fabless design companies, each with a minimum of $200 million potential, unless we will not get there. And that, of course, means we also need the corresponding engineering workforce and everything else. And Mr. Dutta mentioned, if you look around China, Korea, Taiwan, Japan, they all had some national programs to begin with. I remember in China, for example, they had the 863 program that started in March 1986, followed by a 909, which is September 1990. Korea had a IT 839 program back in September of 1983, and Japan has STARC, and Taiwan has a national SOC program. So ISA took it upon itself to work very closely with DIT, and thank you, DIT, for giving us this opportunity to work with you, to be considered as your knowledge partner, so that we can at least get the rest of the industry here thinking about a national mission for electronics. And I'm very, very excited that, over these last few years, with the help of the work that we have done and, the support that we have gotten from the minister, from the secretary, and other members of their team, a lot of new interesting things have already been announced. And in fact, there are some draft policies on IT, on telecom, on electronics that are already out there. And we are in the final stages of getting all those things approved through the cabinet. But if you look at the national policy of electronics at its draft stage today even, there is a national electronics mission. There is talk about investing in manufacturing semiconductor through fabs in this country. There's going to be a modified SIPs so that we can get all the ancillary industries once again getting manufactured here. The technology incubation, creation of manufacturing clusters, graduating several thousand PhDs, all of these go towards that national electronics mission. And I'm very happy to say that just as of last Friday, one of the other ones, which was the preferential market access, this is setting aside certain amount of government procurement, especially if it has security implications, for companies that produce their goods here, their IPs are here, or they're manufactured here with a very well-defined bill of material defined in that process. And with the secretary, the minister, etc., we'll have all the clarity around that. But I think it's a call for action for us in the industry now. I think our government has stepped up to provide the direction we're looking for, the policies that we're looking for. It is the entrepreneurs within us, it's the industries out here. Let's make use of this opportunity. Let's really get this nation going towards the next phase of nation building through high tech. As I close here, I'll also like to mention, especially with having so many members here today, I'm very, very pleased to mention to you that in the last 1 year alone, we have added what we in the industry call 45 new logos. 45 new members have come in, and today we have 175 members within ISA, which used to be in double digits just a couple of years ago. In fact, from last year to this year, we have added significant numbers. Half of our member base, by the way, are registered locally in India. So there are a lot of Indian companies that are based out of ISA. I want to dispel the notion that this is just in a club of some multinationals. In fact, if you look at it from last year to this year, it was 1/3 local companies, 2/3 multinationals. Now it's half and half, which is the right balance. We definitely need the expertise that comes from some of the MNCs who have been here for the last 20, 30 years. But we also like to see the engine of the growth for the future will have to come from our own local startups and entrepreneurs. Finally, I'd like to, and also before I forget, I would also like to mention out of these 175 companies, 1/3 of them are systems companies. We used to be very semiconductor and chip and EDA and IP oriented, which are all very, very important because they are at the heart of the electronics. But at the end of the day, the common person gets to see the box. And that's what actually impacts their living room, their education, their classroom, their children's lives. So we are glad to see these systems companies coming into ISA, and we'll continue to encourage that further. So in closing, any of these conferences as they go, it depends a lot on the content of the presentations that you will see later. I'm very confident that they're top class. The networking opportunities that you will have, so please take the time to meet with your peers and colleagues. And of course, your personal motivation of what you really want to take out of this conference. And there I would like to urge and implore you, please debate, discuss, and allow us to devise new strategies for this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dutta.